Hey, Vino.
What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball and New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Rattler. Popping with you, bro.
What up, bro? Listen, sometimes I read the comments and them people are right, man. That intro is tough. That intro go tough. I feel myself. I be in that thing bouncing to it myself, man. But no, man, everything's all good on this side, man. And getting comfortable in these doldrums of the NBA time. But man, hey, I shout out to Slam Ball for coming back, man, and saving the sports. It was random. I was sitting around like Friday. I'm like, wait a minute, does that say Slam Ball? I'm thinking it's like a little throwback or something. Man, this the real deal. Nate Robinson calling the games. They back to putting people on the backside. I mean, it is. I am enjoying it. I'm glad. This is such a blast from the childhood, the Spike TV days. If you know, you know. But man, it's good to have it back. But it gives you a sense of basketball, right? You see that the reserve team gets announced. Just basketball is always there, man. It's ubiquitous, right? You got the Dame Lillard, James Harden, anytime Joel Embiid out there talking on podcasts and stuff. Draymond Green beefing with people, daddies and stuff. The NBA is wild, but nah, man, I'm enjoying all of these different avenues of sports and trying to get to the off season. I mean, get to preseason and summer league and training camp and all that. Trying to get to all of those times what we got. So it's all good on this side, man. How's everything on your end?
Man, everything is blessed. That's all we can. All we can pray for is our health. But yeah, man. First off, I forgot how dangerous Slam Ball is. Like,
it's elite.
I had some people over and we were watching the games. I'm like, how do they not get injured more often? Like they are so high in
violent
the air
collisions
with very little paddings and like come down. And I'm like, but it's great. Like it's great TV. I like the one-on-one, like the free throws are one-on-one at the goal.
Yeah,
like, incredible. That's incredible, man. But yeah, you're right, man. Right now, you got the WNBA, you got Slam Ball, and you got old clips. ESPN is playing the replay of the finals, the replay of the. It's that time of year.
dropping triple doubles in the pro am in the Drew League. That's what we got. That's that time of the year.
That's where we at. The TBT, like that's where we at. That's where we at with things like that. That being said, hey, shout out to Dyson Daniels. He held his first camp. As a pro growing up, that's usually the next step. Hold his camp back at home, and you called it. Trey Murphy gets announced to the FIBA select team. How you feel about that? Like, okay. To be honest, when I first saw it, I was like, oh well, Trey's not on the varsity team, but at the same time, you know what? You gotta earn his chops. You gotta put your work in. You gotta follow the footsteps of the people that came before you. So, what are your thoughts on Trey? Again, everybody gets a little bit of experience this summer, heading into next season.
Yeah, man. I mean, Pels are international, man. Between Jose and Trey and Bi, like Pels are international. But I think to your point, I agreed. I think that Trey Murphy, yeah, JV exactly. Trey Murphy. Being on the select team, I think that his game is going to translate so well to the international game, as well as his personality, to be honest with you. But I thought that he could get a spot on that that varsity team, especially if guys like Walker Kessler are there. I thought like Trey Murphy can obviously get that. But you're right, there are steps that need to be taken. So this is good to know that he's on the roster and on the radar for international ball. I think it'll be wonders. I cannot wait to see what the practice sounds like when you got Brandon Ingram on one side and Josh Hart on that side, and then Trey Murphy on the other side. I'm sure B.I. is going to try to go at Trey and vice versa. It should be really good, man. Iron sharpens irons. The select team is there to run scrimmages and practice against the team and get the team ready for international competition. So it should be, it should be a really good experience for everybody involved. I think that Trey Murphy is going to learn, just how serious the international game is and how serious that they train. And those are the things that you take back with you, right? When you see all the videos of Trey in the gym hooping and he looks so much better and so much bigger and all of these things. The next step is learning the professionalism, the side of that side, and training and committing to the game of basketball. And I think being on the select team is a great way to start that. So I'm excited. I'm excited about what they experience out there.
Yeah, it's cool to see again the growth and the natural maturity of players from year one to year two to year three and what they do differently each summer to help enhance their game. And so again, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick up with part two of last week's episode where we talk about again the growth of this roster. The Pelicans chose to reflect internally and to grow internally and let that be the meat and the potatoes of what they did in the offseason. Again, a lot of talent, just haven't seen it unfold and haven't had a full healthy season of it. And so let's pick back off of it. Whose growth is most important? Again, as a reminder, it's not the best player. It's not number one, right? Or Zion would be number one, B.I. would be number two, things like that. It's more so whose growth or taking that next step can help impact success the most for the Pelicans next season. So I believe you left it off with 6, so I'll let you with the snake draft kick it off with your number 5.
Yeah. So once again, we're talking about the growth and whose growth matters most to the Pelicans, right? Who needs to take that next step? And at 5, I got Jose, man. I got Jose. So Jose, man, this is a big season for Jose coming in. Especially with some of the things that are going on with the CBA and things like that, and of course with Jose making the money that he makes, it doesn't directly involve him, right? But Dyson Daniels is vying for that backup point guard position, and so with numbers crunching and people going to be needing to get paid coming up, these are the opportunities for guys to step up and take positions by the neck, right? Grab those by the neck. And I think that Jose Alvarado is sliding right into that spot when we talk about that backup point guard position. If Jose can take another step, right, and become one of, because I think that he's already on a very short list of like best backup point guards in the league. Talk about like guys like Tyus Jones and things like that. I think Jose is on that list, right? He may not be one or two, but you'll probably get to Jose quicker than you would a lot of other people. And so I think it's time for Jose to take a next step. One of the things that I'm interested in, man, is, a lot of Grand Theft Alvarado is on tape now, right? Guys are checking. Guys know what you are about. Guys know that you are a person that picks up full court and look for those steals. What's the next step, right? What is the counter move now that is on tape? How can you continue to be that defensive presence, if not take it up a next level? Now that everybody knows what the things that you do and what you're there, right? Obviously, the jump shot. If he could get a reliable jump shot where that is something that he can go to and kick out, or maybe even come around screens and snake around drafts and sneak around picks and things like that, and he could get those mid-range shots and things like that. If that is something that he can pick up, I think that is a great step moving forward for Jose. But I think his mastery of the point guard position, right, and showing that he is the table setter, and really, with the Pelicans not having a starting point guard, can he be the point guard for the Pelicans, right? If you have all of these other guys, but you need to have a point guard, can Jose grab that position by the horns and finally answer that question? What happens when the Pelicans get a true point guard, right? If he can become the answer to that question, I think that helps the Pelicans as far as their reserves and as well as their starting lineup, because if that's a guy that you can rely upon to play heavy minutes with Brandon Ingram, with Zion, and still bring that defensive chop, but also be an offensive point guard, a maestro, things of that nature, right? And obviously you're going to have times where CJ is missing, Briai is missing, Zion is missing. If that is something where Jose can step in and be that Tyus Jones role where you don't miss a step, you don't miss a beat, because he has such mastery of the offense, of the system, of the guys around him, I think that Jose would be a tremendous help for the Pelicans in the direction that they want to go. So I have Jose at number 5. What you got, bro?
Okay, I like that. I've got Jose somewhere different on the list, so I'll save my comments for them. But at number 5, I got Herb Jones. Again, if Herb is the exact same player he was last year, I think I'll take that. Like, I especially how he was playing after the All-Star break, I think I'll take that. But the question again, like everybody knows, is can you find your niche offensively? And more specifically for Herb, everybody's looking at the 3-point shot because Herb is going to get the other team's worst defender. Like that's what's going to happen because of all the other firepower that's on the court. And so, can you make them pay when the natural flow of things, progression of the offense, lead to Herb in the corner? As you saw over the course of the back half of the season, he was getting more reliable from the catch and shoot three. But when I'm really looking for Herb is, can you find your spots to attack offensively? You talk about PJ Tucker, what he was able to develop over the course of his career in terms of that corner three being a go-to shot. Draymond Green never really developed the corner three, but there's certain aspects of the offense where he fakes the dribble handoff and then he cuts it and goes to the basket with 2 points. Like, people find their niche, even if they're more defensive focused, find the go-to shots that man, every time that's going to be a goal. Somebody who you and I talk about dearly, who, his last year was in the league, Udonis Haslem. Never was a star player, always a great defender, always a part of the trio or surrounding the best talent of the league, but he developed the mid-range shot from the side. Like, that, there's always one thing that someone develops. Can Herb find that? Can he be a beast in transition? Can he adapt a little bit? You talk about the Josh Hart, where, Herb, you're 6'8". Like, most people are not going to be able to block your shot in transition, especially as he gets bigger. Like, we talk about Trey putting on weight. Well, Herb is also built like a spider. So as he gets builder and he gets a little bit stronger, it's going to be hard to stop Herb because Herb is also very athletic. And so if he could get a little bit more confident there, a little bit more stable in terms of what he's bringing from an offensive perspective and develop a go-to move, I think that just accelerates the Pelicans so much. And it doesn't become, is it this player or this player in the start lineup? It's like, well, first of all, I don't think Herb's leaving the starting lineup anytime soon anyway, especially after getting a contract. But more so, hey, Herb is not a liability on offense. He can bring this, and that. And it's up to Willie Green to find out what those places are. So with the snake draft, I'll continue. I'll go from Herb, and I'm number 5, to somebody you already mentioned that I want to talk about just a little bit. It's CJ McCollum as my number 4. So we talk about the sacrifice. Everybody sees it. The world sees it. Every podcast you read, every national article or news clip you read, Trey Murphy. And everybody says, well, if somebody has to go to the bench, who's it going to be? Things like that. Again, I'm not sure. I think that there's a world where everyone plays starters minutes, 30 minutes, 20, someone's around there, and you kind of pick and choose based off of who's got it going that night. But I think, again, from what Willie Green showed you, is that he's always going to trust the veteran at least to start out, things like that. My biggest thing is, like, are you willing to get yours just in a different way? Like, you talk about CJ, since it feels like he wakes up and he has 20 points on the board. That's going to happen. And this team, you just talked about, like, they're never going to have a full 82 games with all players playing the majority game. It's just not going to happen. And so people are going to have different roles throughout the season, and you're going to be asked to call up. It's going to be next man mentality here and there. And so at no point do you want to calm a person down. But something you said on part 1 that I think resonates just so well. Sometimes with CJ, it's not, is it the best stop for CJ versus is it the best shot for the team? Because CJ works so hard. He develops his craft so many different ways. He talks about playing so many different positions. Obviously, he was a star at Lehigh, star for the Blazers and things like that. But he talks about coming off the bench. He talks about having to earn his role. He talks about those things because he's never been a super athletic, super big guy who could dominate by force. He always had to do it through skill and craft and things like that. Well, you know what that sets up perfectly to be? A 6-man. Like, that's literally the type of game. Like, look at the best 6-mans of all time. Like Lou Will, people like that. Like, they have very similar games to CJ.
Jamal Crawford.
Like, they have very similar games to CJ. And oh, by the way, that one guy from San Antonio who entire career was a 6-man, Manu Ginobili,
Hall of Famer.
James Borrego was his coach back then. So it's not a coincidence that CJ said, hey, I've been picking the ears of James Borrego since we've been in the building this summer and things like that, because I think he can get the most out of CJ. Again, whether that's starting when the ball is tipped off or whether you're playing 33 minutes, 32 minutes, whether you're closing every game or not, are you willing to do what it takes? And I think CJ is, because at this point in his career, it's about winning, it's about legacy, it's about what can you do next. And again, you're going to have to sacrifice along the way. That's everybody on the roster, including him. So CJ's not my number 4. If he can take that mentality of, maybe this is what's best for the team, or here's what's best for the team in this scenario, and apply it in that regard. So, who do you got as your number 4?
Yeah, I think what you said about CJ is spot on, man. And it is going to be very interesting to see what role acceptance looks like as the season goes on. But at 4, actually, since we got the snake draft, you can already see this is going to be a attack of the perimeter. So at number 4, I got the Hawkman, man. I got Hawkeye. I got Jordan Hawkins, man. I got Jordan Hawkins high. He's at number 4 in his development. And what I said about this, obviously, you brought up Jordan Hawkins earlier. Though I think his skill set, and we talk about the difference between he and Trey. His skill set, from what we saw in college, is something that just has not been on this team. And it definitely has not been on this team with Zion and Brandon Ingram and CJ and now new Trey and JV and just all of these guys. What people have to realize is that Jordan Hawkins was a number 1 option. They ran plays for him. They were always looking for him. He was always in motion. And when he was coming around screens, they were looking for him. And then he got to Summer League and they gave him the ball after Dyson, obviously, and was like, hey, you make some stuff happen. You do things. It did not work well, and it slumped over to other parts of his game. But if Jordan Hawkins, first of all, can get to a spot where he is not a defensive liability and can earn those minutes from Willie Green, I think that he's gonna unlock the offense in ways that is gonna be. It should be wild. It really should, because if you're thinking about an offensive set, and we've been watching old Pelicans games. I watched the Minnesota Timberwolves Pelicans game from December earlier today, and I just watched Zion even without Brandon Ingram on the floor, just have so much gravity. There were 3-second violations called over and over again on Anthony Edwards, on Naz Reid, on just so many guys, because they were so worried about Zion. And I'm thinking, well, what happens if you throw Brandon Ingram on the floor, right? Herb Jones wasn't on the floor for that game either. That's a guy that's always in motion, setting screens, back cut, got a lot of IQ, so you got to worry about him. So if you're worrying about Brandon Ingram and Zion, if you have a team that has Trey Murphy and Jordan Hawkins on the sides, it's so many bad decisions to be made, right? You have to help on Zion, but you can't leave single coverage on Brandon Ingram. Oh, wait, there's only 5 people on the floor, so Trey and Jordan Hawkins are there. And we saw just what having Zion and Trey Murphy on one side of the floor did for other guys and gets a lot of shots open for Trey Murphy. Well, Trey Murphy's a guy who likes to stand and get ready for his shot. Jordan Hawkins is a guy who you can throw him open. Word to NFL, New Orleans.football. Throw him open like Derek Carr, and he can catch and shoot in one fall swoop. And I just think that when you have the defense making so many choices on the floor, and 1 or 2 possessions, and 1 or 2 passes, I think that helps the offense, and it creates so much drama for the defense and so much chaos that it's only inevitable that one of these guys are going to be open, and none of those guys should be open. So what I say about Jordan Hawkins, I think that his skill set added to Trey Murphy, right? Added to this new Trey Murphy. I think that if he can get to a point where he's not the defensive liability, get in that weight room, get a little bigger, and come in with that same confidence that he had at UConn, and not let Summer League kind of get into his head and permeate throughout the rest of the season. I just think that his shooting is such a huge weapon for the Pelicans this season that if he can get right and get on the floor, it is a game changer for the Pels. And sticking with the snake draft, number 3, same with the attack on the perimeter, is Trey Murphy. I think this is the year for Trey Murphy. I think this is the year where he steps out of the shadows of Brandon Ingram and Zion and becomes part of a big 3.5, big 4, if you want to call it, with CJ. And I think that what Trey can come into this season with that'll help is that if he comes in with the self-awareness that you are now part of the big three and a half, big four, however you want to call it. So when you get the ball, it's probably best that you should shoot the ball. And I think that if he could come into with that mentality, we talked about if he just comes in and is the same guy, I think we'd all take that, right? Another 14, 15 point per game season, knocking on the door 40% from three-pointer, having games where he's 40 points, scorching from the three-point line. I think we'd all be happy. But if he comes in with more of a mentality of, I'm going to shoot it, I'm going to shoot it every time I touch the ball. He talks about Brandon Ingram and Zion always telling him, hey, shoot the ball. And CJ always telling him, shoot the ball. They don't need to tell him that, right? Take a little confidence from Jordan Hawkins. He you can rein him back and y'all can, even it out a little bit. But I think Trey Murphy's development is one of those things where he could be knocking on the door of a fringe all-star guy. I think that he has that type of potential in the league where they're like, okay, well, if this guy doesn't make it, injury replacement, should we be looking at Trey Murphy as a replacement? That type of season. And I think he's very capable of having it, especially if those guys stay healthy. But I think everybody, the elephant in the room when it comes to Trey Murphy's development is, man, if this guy starts putting his ball on the ground, like we're seeing in all of these workouts where he's no longer like pump faking 1-2 dribble. He's like, no, come out here. We can play one-on-one together. Then I think that just exponentially raises the growth, raises the level, raises the floor for the Pelicans. So much so that I think that if he starts to develop that and he takes another step that way, that you could start seeing him be in that starting lineup where CJ really might not have an opportunity to make a decision about it, right? If he comes in and is that good. So this again, it is not a knock on CJ. Obviously CJ has a role on this team that is defined. He is the leader. He is the bucket getter. That is who he is. But at a certain point, Trey Murphy can give you 23, 25 points the same way CJ can, except he's 6'9", 6'10" now. If he comes back even more strong and can be better defensively, that's a step. But I think Trey Murphy's growth is integral for this team. And I think if he comes with the same development that we've been seeing every year since he's been in the league, if this is the year where he starts putting the ball on the ground and starts to play with a chip, as in like, hey, I'm part of the big three, the core future, like I am cemented in these plans, then I think the Pelicans go from being, a team to watch out for to a team that's like, whoa, that's another guy we got to deal with, along with all of the other offensive weapons that they have for the Pelicans. So Trey Murphy is third on my list.
I hear you. Okay. At 3, I have Brandon Ingram. He's high on my list, even though he's already one of the best players on this team. Because again, I'm a student of history. Every season, Brandon Ingram comes back better at something. Every single year, he's improved. And people say, well, that's what you're supposed to do. That's not what happens. Like, for every player, that's not what happens. Every year, someone doesn't get – some people level off very quickly. Some people never grow. Like, that's not what happens.
We still waiting on Ben Simmons.
Right. Or Rondo to get a jumper. Like, none of that ever happened, right? But with Brandon Ingram, again, whether it was his efficiency, his playmaking, his defense, his strength, like every single season, his three-point shot, every single season, something has gotten better. And so for this season, become an all-NBA player. He said it himself. They asked, BI, what would it mean for you guys to become an all-star and this and that? And he was like, listen, I just think it would be cool to be an all-NBA player because, again, B.I.'s a basketball junkie. Like, he wants to be recognized as one of the greats to ever hoop ever. And if that's the case, you got to get to that all-NBA level sooner rather than later, and I think he can. I think, again, taking that diligence, taking that maturity step, say, you know what, I want to be a part of something special. Let me go play with the FIBA team and be a leader on that team. Like, outside of Anthony Edwards, I think the ball is going to Brandon Ingram as well. And so in that scenario, that's going to help him grow off another alpha, right? Because some of the best moments you've seen from Brandon Ingram, Zion hasn't been on the court. But how do you make sure that you're just as dominant when he is on the court, right? And that's something that is going to take some time throughout the season. Like, I don't expect day one, knock on wood, the entire roster is healthy, I don't expect the Pelicans to look their best on day one because, again, you just haven't seen very much Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy basketball. So it's going to take some time to figure out their rhythm, to figure out but how do you make sure you're still that BI when even though Z is on the court? How do you make the smaller guys pay? Again, the thing for BI and the things for Zion's, how do you take some of that contact, some of the hits away from yourself? Man, if Brandon Ingram can add three, maybe 2 to 3 more 3-point catch and shoot 3-point shots again, because again, if you got Zion on the court, he's gonna have more of that. He shot 40% from three this year. Like that's something that Brandon Ingram has been excelling in. And so if you give him a couple more wide open opportunities, that helps the team 3-point attempts. That's gonna help his scoring numbers. Again, I look at Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown in the East, and as long as the Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram are on the court, there's no reason the talent should be close, if not on par, right, in terms of that level. And so not only that, but I think the biggest thing for him this summer, and Griffiths talked about it, he's talked about it. I think there's a good reason why after that last Timberwolves game where Anthony Edwards took it on him to guard Brandon Ingram, and he got physical with Brandon, and Brandon talked about after, I've got to get better, I've got to get stronger. I think that was the type of game that he was reading and talking about. And so not only the strength part of his game, but getting to the free throw line. Like I think we all heard it when he's like, hey, I play the game the right way and I'm not going to, flop, and I'm not going to do this and that for fouls. Okay, then how do you use your length and the fact that you're 6'9", 6'10" to draw fouls while keeping the ball strong, and so that you don't have to shoot contested jumper, make the game a little bit more easier for you and things like that. If he can get to the line a little bit more, I think again Brandon Ingram's he already has the talent, but to maintain it over the course of the season in a way that keeps his body upright, I think that's the next step for him. For number 2, similar to you, I got Trey Murphy. Again, if you gave me Trey at the end of the season, I'm cool with that. Like he was scoring 20 points a night. He was third behind Stephen Clay in 3 points made. Like I'm cool with that. But to your point, you told me one time, we talked about this off the pod. When they created the game of basketball, they didn't think about Giannis Antetokounmpo dribbling the ball, and they didn't think about Victor Wembanyama dribbling the ball down the court. When they created the game of basketball, they didn't think about Trey Murphy, who's 6'10", who shoots like Clay, dunks like Zion. Like they weren't thinking about all that. If this young man can figure out how to score off the dribble, I don't know what you do with the Pelicans. Like you said it perfectly. There's a lot of bad decisions that have to be made. And so again, he's got time. He's got the veterans and the scorers around him that he doesn't need that. But if he brings that, I don't know, bro. And so for me, the next step for Trey, obviously getting stronger and being better defensively. But can you make the short guys pay? Like, Trey, put somebody in the post. Trey, turn around and shoot over people, even if they're 6'5". Like, that, you don't see them. Like, I want the arrogance to come out of Trey in terms of his ability to score the ball this year. And so I'm with you. If I would take Trey the way he is, but man, if that guy levels up, I don't know. I'm just gonna say this every episode. Max contract. Who you got at number 2?
Yeah, no, hey, bro, Trey's ceiling is scary, man. So at number 2, I got Bi. I got Bi there, and I think for me, I have written down 50, 40, 90. Make it happen this season. It's possible. You talked about being all NBA. That'll get you all NBA. Mm-hmm. With the way you score, and the way you shoot free throws, if you get the 50, 40, 90, that'll get you all NBA. So I think if BI can come in with a 50, 40, 90 target, mindset, is very attainable for him. And I think that is something that if he could get there, I think the Pelicans are looking at once again being at the top of the West, and hopefully past December, it'll stay there. But I think this is the year if having FIBA in your back pocket and having that experience, that leadership, and then coming in with that hunger to be one of the best players in the league, which you're knocking on the door every single year. Everybody's always talking about knocking on the door to superstardom. A 50, 40, 90 season and a deep playoff run will get you that respect and probably, get you paid if you could get into that all NBA class. So and I think adding a little bulk and coming back and hunting for contact, like you said, those are the type of things that'll help get you to the line, get you some easy buckets, and also get that scoring average up there. So I'm gonna go snake draft with my number one, and then let you go with your number one. Number one is Herb Jones, man. Herb Jones. I think that Herb Jones, his development can get the Pelicans to being a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. If he can get up to close to 38%, and we saw him blowing past that towards the end of the season at 40%, like almost there. If he can be a consistent 38% shooter from at least the corners, right? I don't expect to pull up the top of the key threes, which are a lot more difficult, but those corner threes, if we're looking at 38% from Herb Jones, the Pelicans are a top 5 offense and defense. And I think because he's going to, like you mentioned, because he's not going to be out of that starting lineup anytime soon, especially with this new contract and his defensive, like all NBA defense type level defense, I think that development has to come because he's so valuable on the other side of the floor. And to be honest, there's not gonna, he's gonna have times to cut and do things, but Zion is gonna be on the floor. Brandon Ingram's gonna be on the floor. JV is still a member of the Pelicans. He's gonna be on the floor. That's a lot of space, a lot of places where people want to inherit that middle area. And if Herb wants to unlock his ability and, unlock the next level for the Pelicans, being a great offensive team to go right to next to that defensive team, obviously they're going to have the heavy hitters, knock on wood, as long as Zion and BI and CJ and Trey and Jordan is making shots and JV can get the ball and score. But if Herb Jones becomes a guy that you can't take a step off in the corners, I think that the Pelicans become, exponentially better. And I just know that Herb's defense is something that is valued by the Pelicans. Is something that the reason why they paid him, a guy that averages sub 10 points, $50 million, $53 million, is because of his defensive chops. And if he can get that corner three, that's all I'm asking. Not the elbow threes, not the top threes. Corner three, 38, 39, 40% from those areas. Then I think that we cook it with gas at that point. So Herb Jones for the 2023-2024 Pelicans, Herb Jones is my number one. If the growth has to happen for the Pelicans to be where they want to be, Herb is number one on my list. Who's your number one, bro?
Man, this is going to surprise it. I got Jose
Alvarado,
I think I know, bro. I got Jose Alvarado.
That's interesting. That is very interesting.
I have watched at least every game at least twice last season. I'm telling you, outside of Zion Williamson, there's nobody that lights up the arena like Jose Alvarado. Like, there was a stretch of games where Jose was bringing the team back. Like, offensively bringing the team back. Like, there's just something special about the guy. And people want to say, oh, well, he's a role player. He's an energizer guy. Yeah, but, like, he's not TJ McCollum. Like, TJ McConnell's career high is 29 points. Jose had 39 points in a game last year. In year 2, and in the same week had another 30-point game. Like, Jose was coming along. Like, people talk about, obviously, Zion not being available and Beyond not being available most of last year. But Jose not playing meant so much to this team. Like, at the end of the year, people weren't that shocked with Thunder because it felt like, man, they had nothing left. They had no energy left. They had no burst left. A lot of that's because they didn't have Jose on the court. Man, Jose was coming along last season, and the three was starting to fall, and he was getting aggressive with the Tony Parker snake dribble floater. Like, he was getting more assertive offensively, and he was becoming a player that, like you said, a point leader off the bench for this team. And so, again, I talk about the growth in terms of, hey, if you're the same player last year, that's probably good enough with the roster. But if Jose can, again, you talk about the three-point shot with her, if Jose can get the open three-point shot to 38%. Same type of thing. Corner threes, 38%. If he can get the floater down a little bit, if he can get the big man easy buckets, because again, we talk about this team not being like the best passing team in the world. Jose is one of the better passers, right? Like if he can get that going, again, Jose has game, and it's not the gimmicky kind. Like this guy, he won the Rising Stars event and called his shots on a floor full of stars. Like Jose has more game than people are giving him credit for. And if he can take what he does for a team and with the energy of a building and add skill on top of that, like that's something that, again, we talk about the Pelicans having roles for places. You got stars, you got role players, you got people who are good at shooting, people are good at if you have an energy guy who happens to be upticking his skill level to the point where you're looking right, like this might be one of the best point guards in the league, on top of the starting roster you have, that's a differentiator that most people, when the Pels were rocking in December, it's because their bench had the best plus minus in the league. Guess who was leading the bench? Like, that's the type of impact that Jose has on a game. And if he can continue to grow and continue to help his skill level grow and the things he can do and the things he can do consistently, again, I'm not asking Jose to score 30 points a game, but if he can do certain things very well offensively consistently, I think that's what makes this Pelicans team different from most teams in the league. Like most teams don't have two guys that average 25 points at the efficiency that they have and 6-6 all the way, but they definitely don't have a Jose Alvarado as well. So that is my number one for this year, Jose Alvarado's impact and growth into success next year. This was a fun exercise. I feel like it was different than last year, bro.
Yeah.
It was different.
Yeah, it
than
was.
Last year,
It was. Number one for me last year was Trey Murphy, and I mean, boof.
Here we
so
are.
we'll see.
Here we are.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Well, that being said, that's all we got left for part 2 of this episode. What you got left for the people, Garrick?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, this was a fun exercise. It's going to be very interesting to look back at this, in December and then in February and see, how these things have come about and where the Pelicans are and, whose growth, who took that next step, right? And it'll be very interesting to see, moving forward, with so much talent on the roster, who takes that next step up and starts to cement some of these roles that we talked about. So as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler on Twitter. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO Basketball, no E, on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere you have your social medias. Subscribe to New Orleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys next week.